We are live now.
Good evening, fellow yogis, and all brother and sister who are watching on our Facebook Live from Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Australia. A big welcome to our Dharma talk tonight by Patrick Carney, entitled To Vacchagotta About Fire, Part 2. This is a continuation of yesterday's talk, so please stay tuned to gain full understanding of this Dharma talk. Patrick will start off with chanting, followed by Dharma talk. May I now invite Patrick to start the session. Patrick, please.
So let's begin the chanting. Vandana Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Tisadana Buddhang Saranang Gacchami Dhammang Saranang Gacchami Sanghang Saranang Gacchami Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Panchasila Anatipata Veramani Sikaparang Samadhiyami Adinadana Veramani Sikaparang Samadhiyami Kamesu Michachara Veramani Sikaparang Samadhiyami Musavada Veramani Sikaparang Samadhiyami Sura Meraya Majapamadatana Veramani Sikaparang Samadhiyami. So tonight we continue to talk about Majjhima 72, I think. Agi Vacchagotta Sutta, to Vacchagotta about fire. And tonight we actually get to the fire, which is good. So yesterday we were doing the first section of this discourse, and we were looking at a dialogue between Vacchagotta, or just Vaccha, the Buddha calls him, and the Buddha. So Vaccha was came from a wealthy Brahmin family. He had renounced the Vedic tradition and gone off to become a wanderer, or a seeker after truth, a wandering renunciant. And he's got a real passion for the truth. He really wants to find out what's going on. And he's looking for it by trying to get to the bottom of the most profound philosophical questions of his day. And so he comes to the Buddha with a list of these questions. And there are 10 questions, all of which revolve around identity. The questions about the universe, the relationship between life and the body, and the survival of an awakened one after death. Now, as we mentioned before, these questions all revolve around identity. So, for example, what is the real nature of the universe? What is the real identity of the awakened one? Now, if we ask what is Vacca searching for through these questions, what does he want? He is searching for certainty. He wants to be certain about the nature of the universe and the nature of awakening. Because if he can get this, he feels he will be at peace. In other words, the basis for his obsession with these questions is his sense of his own place in the world, of who he is in the world. If he can find the answers to these questions, then he will be at peace. Then he would have justified his abandonment of his family and his class position and his career. And then others would respect him as someone who has cracked the cosmic puzzle. And maybe he could even build a career as a great teacher. So Vacca wants to be clear about himself and his own place in the world. He wants to gain some kind of certainty within his own position, who he is and what this world is. But the Buddha is playing a different game. Right from the very beginning, the Buddha is playing a different game. He's refusing to engage with any of these questions because his focus is not on theories and doctrines, but on the felt actuality of experience. That's what he's interested in. And he's also interested in our determination to push aside actual experience in favor of clinging to convictions and theories and dogmas. So we get this distinction between Ditthigata and Ditta. Ditthigata, conceptual views, we translated them as convictions, and instead Ditta, experiential view, what a direct seeing of what's really going on. And the Buddha is pointing out that when we live in our concepts, like why do we live in our concepts? What is so attractive about this world? It's because in this world, we can create a fixed sense of identity. We can create what the Buddha calls a self. And we can create a world which is meaningful, and we can find some kind of certainty and stability in this world as this person. So that's what we're looking for. And of course, we don't realize that it's our very clinging to this project, it's our very obsession with this project, which is creating our pain and our insecurity. So it doesn't work. We're just going around in circles. And Vacca is just going around in circles. So the Buddha speaks about a state of liberation where all the constructions of identity and possession are deconstructed, along with the underlying potential for separating from experience as the one who undergoes the experience. Now, this is mana, and this is probably the deepest layer of self. This is the sense that you have, and it's not intellectual, it's not a thought, but as you're, for example, as you're sitting here, you are undergoing the experience of listening to and viewing an online Dharma talk. As you do this, do you have the sense that there's someone in here who is experiencing this Dharma talk? Do you have that sense that there's someone in here and there's those people out there? That fundamental sense of separation is what the Buddha calls mana. And this is the sense that there's someone here who's undergoing the experience and therefore who is not part of the experience, but somehow outside it. And so the Buddha talks about when all of that drops away. He says, that's the way the awakened one is liberated by not clinging, with the weakening, fading, cessation, and letting go of all disturbances, so all the sense of agitation, or constructing of identity. And this is ahankara, literally I-making, and letting go of all constructing of possession, literally mine-making, and letting go of the underlying potential for separation. So all of that drops away. This is liberation through not clinging. And the awakened one, this is what he or she has experienced. So the Buddha explains this to Vaccha, but Vaccha doesn't quite get it. He's trying to understand where the Buddha is coming from, but he's so caught up in his sense of self that he cannot quite grasp what the Buddha is talking about. So Vaccha is nodding his head that yes, there is the liberation of the heart through not clinging. Okay, he's fine with that. He's even fine with the idea, with the sense that the Buddha is the one to tell him this, because he does have faith in the Buddha, that if anybody's liberated through not clinging, it's this guy. But his mind keeps coming back to the question, but who is this person who is liberated? Now, the way he frames this question is through the context of life after life, of what is often called reincarnation, or in Buddhist circles usually called rebirth. But the idea that one life is succeeded by another, by another, by another, by another, by another. In other words, the fundamental sense that something happens next. So, okay, liberated through not clinging, what happens next? So the Vaccha starts to inquire what happens next to a practitioner who is liberated in this way. And he says, when a practitioner's heart is liberated in this way, where does he appear after death? And the Buddha replies, the term reappears does not apply. Na upeti does not applies, does not apply. Now, it's like we've suddenly gone around in a circle and we're back to the dance before. And Vaccha goes on to explore the four logical possibilities that we talked about yesterday. And these are the four logical possibilities of ancient Indian logic. A, not A, both A and not A, neither A nor not A. So all possibilities are exhausted within these four. So Vaccha goes on to say, then he does not reappear. Na upeti does not apply. Then he both reappears and does not reappear. Na upeti does not apply. Then he neither reappears and does not reappear. Na upeti does not apply. Now, if you look at it from Vaccha's perspective, he's still stuck in identity. So, okay, his awakening and liberation of the heart has been achieved. But what happens to the one who is awakened and whose heart is liberated? This is what he's hanging on to now. Now, it's easy to dismiss Vaccha as a fool, like he's just not, thick as two broad planks, as we like to say. But his question is real, and it possesses actually all of us. when we start to look into our own attitudes towards liberation. So if we ask ourselves, why are we doing this practice? What are we looking for? We're looking for some kind of transformation. Now, however we conceptualize it to ourselves, it might be, we might have a big picture, big ambition. I want enlightenment. It might be much more modest. I just want to be, what is it? Freud said, normal levels of neurosis or something like that. So each of us is, to some extent, dissatisfied with who we are now. We want something different. In other words, we want to become someone different. And to the extent that we think about the goal of our practice, the destination of the path, we think about it in terms of our own identity. I want to be awakened, for example. So what would that look like? What would that feel like? Who would be the awakened me? And how would this awakened me be different from the me here? How would the awakened me live? What happens to the awakened me in the future? And very importantly, what will my friends think about this new awakened me? Now, the problem with this kind of thinking, of course, is that it continues to use the conceptual view of identity to understand transformation. But this is exactly the view that has to be abandoned in order to undergo transformation. So it's like stuck in the loop, and Vaccha is stuck in this loop. And that's why, although we say we want transformation, we say we want to change, actually we don't. We really don't want it at all. Because in order to change, in order to transform, we have to let go of everything that is familiar to us and to plunge into something entirely unknown and by its very nature, unknowable. And that's why in our practice, fear often arises in various ways, especially when we seem to be making progress. And we find ourselves pulling it back from the unknown to the familiar sense of who we are and what we are. So, for example, it's quite common experience that people will be working very hard to gain absorption, samadhi, concentration, and they start to experience it. The mind begins to calm down, the thinking drops or even disappears, and they feel themselves being drawn into a state of absorption. And as soon as they feel themselves being drawn into this, the instant response is panic, and they pull out. And then after they've done that, they go, oh my God, what have I done? I've been working for weeks for this. But as soon as it emerged, pull back. Because to go in there is to surrender control. And to surrender to control is to surrender the self. It's to die in some way. I remember many years ago in Burma when I was doing the intensive meditation practice and wrestling with obsessive thinking, which is really, really painful. And I'd be working really hard in the meditation. No. And gradually the thinking level would drop down and I'd be kind of monitoring it and starting to feel encouraged until it would reach a point where I could see it was getting pretty close to ending. And as soon as I noticed that, bang, there was an explosion of thinking. And I just couldn't understand how I could be so perverse. And finally, it dawned on me that underneath this desire to finally stop thinking was the terror of who would I be if I wasn't thinking? Because my entire identity was built on my thinking. So as soon as it came seemingly within grasp, freak out, bang, think. And I realized that my response when the thinking bang blew up, of course I responded, oh no, this is terrible. But I realized that actually before then, the immediate response was relief. Phew, I'm back again. This is what's happening to Vaccha. He's caught a vague glimpse of what the Buddha is talking about, but he's still trying to understand it conceptually because he can't let go of that. Because if he lets go of that, he lets go of Vaccha. But his very attempt to understand insight conceptually is smothering his insight. So he's caught in this trap. And the Buddha is kind of trying to lead him along. When Vaccha asked the Buddha his 10 philosophical questions, which we looked at yesterday, the Buddha responded by rejecting the view that was being talked about. So do you have the view the world is eternal? And the Buddha doesn't say, yeah, I think the world's eternal. And he doesn't say, I don't think the world's eternal. And he doesn't say, I don't know. He says, I don't have this view. So he's rejecting the view that he's being asked to comment on. Now in this dialogue, na upeti, it does not apply. He's rejecting the very question itself. The very question is wrong. And this is why the Buddha he's going a step further. He's not simply repeating what he said before. He's actually taking Vaccha one step further. And it's a much more radical step. And it's one that Vaccha can't quite get his head around. A friend of mine who's a Zen teacher in Australia, I don't know if he still does, but he used to have a meeting with old friends who were academics or retired academics by this stage, including retired philosophers. And they get together once a week at a coffee shop for good quality coffee and high quality intellectual discussion. And of course, sometimes they get interested in my friend's whole Zen thing, and they'd ask him questions about Zen. And he would answer in ways that they found completely unsatisfactory because they were asking questions at the level of academic theorizing, and he was answering from somewhere else. And finally, one person got really frustrated. And he said, why can't you give me a straight answer to my questions? And my Zen friend replied, you cannot give a straight answer to a crooked question. And this is what the Buddha is saying here. He's saying, look, the question is crooked, but you want a straight answer from me? So he's not playing the game. But Vaccha, of course, is just getting more and more frustrated and more confused. And finally, he says, I don't understand, Master Gautama. I'm confused. Now I have lost the clarity I gained from our previous conversation. So, okay, you led me up to a point. I begin to see what you're getting at, but now I've completely lost it. And the Buddha explains that his confusion is reasonable under the circumstances. He says, look, you come from a different tradition, a different way of looking at things, and different practices. And you're trying to understand something which is very profound and very difficult to understand. So it's perfectly reasonable that you're completely confused. In other words, chill, don't worry about it. So he's not saying to Vaccha, yes, you're completely confused because frankly, you're an idiot and I don't know why I'm wasting my time with you. He's saying, of course you're confused. Like anybody would be confused. So first of all, calm down. Now let's start again. And now we come to the central teaching of this discourse. The Buddha says, What do you think, Vaccha? If a fire was burning in front of you, would you know it? Now you can almost hear the relief in Vaccha's voice when he says, I would, Master Gautama. Oh, by the way, you notice that he's calling the Buddha Master Gautama. Gautama is the Buddha's family name, his clan name. And we don't know, we actually, in the earliest tradition, his personal name is not given. We actually don't know what it was. People call him Mr. Gautama or Master Gautama. In the later tradition, he was given a personal name, Siddhartha, or in Pali, Siddhartha. But some academics suspect that that was just made up subsequently. But in the earliest discourses, we don't hear his personal name. Now, when people call him Master Gautama or Mr. Gautama, what this tells us is that they are not formally his students. They are not Buddhists, quote unquote. If a person takes the Buddha on as a teacher, formally becomes a student, then he or she becomes a Buddhist, quote unquote. And then you get Bhante or Lord or some other title of respect. But when you have someone saying Master Gautama, then there might be someone who's got a lot of respect for him, but he's not formally a student. And this is Vaccha's position. He's still an outsider, looking in, as it were. So what do you think, Vaccha? If a fire is burning in front of you, would you know it? I would, Master Gautama. If somebody asked you, this fire burning in front of you, what does it depend on to burn? What would you answer? Asked that, Master Gautama, I would answer, this fire burning in front of me burns depending on grass and sticks. Pretty obvious. If this fire in front of you goes out, would you know this fire in front of me has gone out? I would, Master Gautama. If somebody asked you, when that fire in front of you goes out, where does it go? To the east? To the west? To the north? Or to the south? What would you answer? And and you can see now something's happening with Vaccha. He's starting to get it. He says, that does not apply. Na upeti. The fire burned depending on its fuel of grass and sticks. When that is used up, if it does not get any more fuel, in the absence of fuel, it is regarded as gone out. And then the Buddha repeats his previous teaching. So too, Vaccha, an awakened one has abandoned that body, perception, choices, awareness, by which one conceptualizing an awakened one conceptualizes it. So he doesn't quite repeat what he said, but he's taking it a step further. So let's unpack this discourse, this dialogue. This is the heart of the sutta. Now you notice we begin with the obvious. So up to now, the way Vaccha has approached things has been through philosophy, the most profound questions. This is what I have to find out. So, imagine an academic seminar full of PhDs asking profound questions about philosophy. But in this dialogue, which now the Buddha is taking over, he's the one asking the questions now. You notice how his questions are completely different. Obvious, like really, really obvious. That fire in front of you, can you see it? The question and the answer is simple, clear, obvious. It's about what's happening right here, right now. Couldn't be, you could ask a 5-year-old and they get it right. The next question, what is it burning? Simple, clear, obvious. 5-year-olds have no problem with it. When it goes out, can you see that? And again, simple, clear, obvious, immediate. What is happening here and now? Now, this reminds us of how the Buddha speaks about the Dhamma in terms of his teaching. So those of you who are used to the chanting of the qualities of the Buddha, the qualities of the Dhamma, the qualities of the Sangha, the three treasures, you know that the Buddha described his Dhamma as directly visible, santitiko, immediate, akaliko. In other words, just like a fire burning in front of us, bleeding obvious, right here, right now. And then, so he's taking Vaccha along, and then with the Buddha's next question, everything jams to a stop. When the fire goes out, where does it go? Now you notice that this question is completely different. The previous questions are all about immediate experience. This question takes an immediate experience and then conceptualizes it to create a metaphor, a fire going out, and builds on that metaphor and then continues to treat it as if it's immediate experience. But it isn't. It's something completely different. Now, can you see how this is taking us back to what the Buddha was talking about when he was distinguishing between experiential view and conceptual view, between ditta and ditthigata? So experiential view, the experience of a rainy afternoon, simple, immediate, obvious, direct. Conceptual view, the theories, the beliefs, and the convictions about climate change and what to do about it. Going away from the immediate experience and constructing a network, a conceptual framework above it. Now, the Buddha is not saying that we should not have theories, beliefs, and convictions about the world. He's not saying that. And he presents us in the Dharma with theories, beliefs, and convictions about the world. But what he is saying is that we need to be able to distinguish between these two aspects of view and not mistake one for the other. They are different. So the fire goes out. Where does the fire go when it goes out? So this question represents entry into a world of concept where the concept is mistaken for the felt experience. And this is the world within which we normally live. And this mistake, the confusion between experiential view and conceptual view, is actually the basis for most of the decisions that we make about our lives. So we begin with our actual experience right here and now. This is experiential view. And then we then slide into networks of concepts about our actual experience. And this movement is so habitual and so subtle that we don't even notice that we've moved. We think nothing has changed. But in fact, everything has changed. So for example, I'm meditating, tracking, let's say the breathing. And there's physical experience, the sense of the body, there's a sense of the room that I'm doing it in, there's the sensations of the breath, and it's chugging along. And then somehow I slide into thoughts. Something reminds me of something, which reminds me of something, which reminds me of something. And suddenly I'm replaying a really unpleasant experience that occurred 6 months ago. And the tension in the body builds. And the bad feeling in the mind develops. And I'm sitting there stewing, feeling really, really bad. And then I suddenly notice, whoops, that's right, that's a memory. And even then, I feel bad for a while afterwards. What I've done is I've slid from experiential view into conceptual view. I haven't even noticed the movement. And I took the conceptual view to be just as real as the experiential view. And I do that again and again and again and again and again. Now, in our dialogue, Vacca now gets it. Now he's beginning to get it. When this fire goes out, where does it go? He's struck by the absurdity of the question. It is a ridiculous question. And so he says what the Buddha says to him, na upeti, it does not apply. So the answer to this question, any answer to this question misses what is actually happening. Any answer to this question sends us off in the wrong direction. And he gets it. He can see that. That does not apply, Master Gautama. The fire burned depending on its fuel of grass and sticks. When that is used up, if it does not get any more fuel, in the absence of fuel, it is regarded as gone out. In other words, the fire is a complex system built upon certain conditions. You've got to have the grass, you've got to have the stick, you've got to have the spark to set it off. When those conditions change, runs out of fuel, it is regarded as gone out. You can conceptualize it as gone out, as gone somewhere, but it hasn't actually gone anywhere. And so too, Vacca, an awakened one has abandoned that body, perception, choices, awareness by which one conceptualizing an awakened one conceptualizes it. In other words, the Buddha is saying that an awakened one cannot be captured by concepts. Now, this list of body, feeling, perception, choices, and awareness we've mentioned yesterday, this represents the 5 bundles or the 5 aggregates, which for the Buddha are the raw materials from which we construct a sense of who we are and what the world is, identity. They represent the fuel that feeds the fire. In fact, they represent the fuel that feeds several fires, the fires of identity, the fires of clinging, the fires of aversion. Now, for the Buddha, clinging and identity are very closely aligned because for him, we are fundamentally what we cling to. That's where we get our identity from. So if I ask the question, the profound philosophical question, who am I? This question actually becomes, who do I think I am? So I am this body. I am these feelings, these emotional responses. I am who I perceive myself to be. So body, feeling, perception. I am the maker of my choices. I'm the one who makes the choices that I make. I am the one who is aware of all of this. But the Buddha is saying that when we directly see these experiences of body, feeling, perception, choices, and awareness, all of them are just events that are coming and going, pretty much beyond our control. And they're coming and going within the field of awareness. Now they come and they go. All of them are impermanent. And if all of them are impermanent, then how can I, quote unquote, be any one of them? So for example, if I am my body, and of course we all identify with the body. If I am my body, then what happens to me when this experience of body falls away and is replaced by another experience of body? Is this a new me? Or is the old me somehow lurking behind this experience of body, unseen but seeing? Well, if that's the case, then I'm not my body. So, for example, if I am my body, then which body is that? Is it the slim, active version of my youth? Or is it the fat, worn-out version of my old age? Like, which one am I? If I am my feelings, then which feeling is that? Is it the feeling that I like this pizza? Or is it the feeling that I don't like that TV show? Which feeling? As I think I've quoted Leonard Cohen before, I don't trust my inner feelings. Inner feelings come and go. So which one of these inner feelings is me? Now, the Buddha is suggesting that the more we ground ourselves in experiential view, like what is actually happening here, now, then the less we can believe our conceptual view is presenting us with what's really going on. The more grounded we are in the actual flow of experience, the less we can take the stories we tell about ourselves to be true. Now, these stories are not true any more than the fire has gone out to the east. Equally, these stories are not false any more than the fire has gone out to the west. The stories we tell ourselves are just stories. Now, to get a sense of what the Buddha is talking about here, because this is a bit weird, this teaching. One way the Buddha talks about this is through the use of the word nimitta, which is usually translated sign. Nimitta is a technical term that pops up, has different contexts. It has a certain context in meditation, but here we're looking at it in another context. So a story is like a sign that points towards something else. For example, let's say we're not having this retreat online. Let's say we were having it at SBS. Let's say that I've never been there before, but I arrive in Taiping and I get a taxi cab and I tell the taxi cab driver, take me to SBS. And he heads off confidently and I leave the suburban street and suddenly on a little where it starts to turn off, I see this big sign that says Sasanaraka Buddhist Sanctuary, and there's a big picture of a map. And I grab hold of the taxi cab driver and say, we're here, we've arrived, stop here, stop. So the taxi cab driver is a bit dubious about this, but I'm confident, there's the sign, Sasanaraka Buddhist Sanctuary. So I get out of the taxi cab with my luggage, send him off, and I plant myself underneath that sign. I have arrived at Sasanaraka Buddhist Sanctuary. And I look around and I think, this is a weird place to meditate. And I notice that other taxi cabs are coming and they're going right past me. They're going further on into this cemetery thing, something. And there's a hill up there. But I'm sticking where I am because I'm at Sasanaraka Buddhist Sanctuary. It says so right here. So where's everybody else? Now, of course, if an experienced SBS person came by and went, what the hell is that person doing there with his luggage? And got out and made inquiries, they might be able to explain the mistake. And they would be thinking, this person is a bit of an idiot. But the thing is, that's what we do. That's pretty much how we live. We mistake the sign, the concept, for the reality. But the sign that says Sasanaraka Buddhist Sanctuary is not Sasanaraka Buddhist Sanctuary because it points toward Sasana Buddhist sanctuary. So whatever else it is, it cannot be Sasana Buddhist sanctuary. But this does not mean it's not useful. Actually, used properly, it is useful. It tells me this is the direction to go in. In other words, as long as I can recognize the difference between a lived reality and a concept, the concepts can help me navigate through life. They can be extremely useful. But I need to understand that an experience is an experience, a direct experience is a direct experience, and a concept is a concept. They're not the same. And so we gave, I think, the more mundane example that if you are fond of a good cup of coffee and you have a friend who has never tasted a coffee, can you communicate to him the taste of a good cup of coffee through your stories about drinking coffee? No. Because a story about something is not that something. The only way to find out is to drink the coffee. So in a sense, the Buddha is saying, well, it's not that, he's not actually saying that the stories are not true. He's saying this story is true, does not apply. But equally, he's saying this story is false, does not apply. And although he's saying this, still, some stories are more useful than others. So, for example, the Buddha tells us a story. An important part of the story that he tells us is that a flourishing human life is possible if we are careful about the choices that we make. Now, that's a story, but it's a much more useful story than I am so hopeless that whatever I do will be useless. That too is a story. But it's not as useful as the Buddha's story. So there's a good reason to prefer his story over the other one. And of course, some stories are closer to the felt flow of experience than other stories. So for example, the story, right now, I am very upset, and so I better be careful about what I'm about to say. That story is probably closer to the felt flow of experience than the story, this person is my lifelong enemy and I need to attack first. Probably it's that second story is not as close to the actual experience. So, where is Nibbana to be found in all of this business about fires and going out? What's the Buddha teaching us about Nibbana? Remember the question is about the fire. Okay, is there a fire in front of you? Yes. Bang. Simple, clear, obvious. What does it burn? Burns wood. Bang. Simple, clear, obvious. When the fire goes out, do you know it's gone out? Yes. Bang. Simple, clear, obvious. Where is Nibbana to be found? Bang. Here. Now. Simple, clear, obvious. Nibbana is found in the direct encounter with the world before we create stories about it. Now, as we've talked about before, we're practicing that direct encounter every time that we note or deliberately aware an experience, and then another and another and another, without getting caught up in our concepts about the experiences. And of course, when we get caught up in concepts about the experience, we note the concept, because the concept is just another experience. It's my experience of a concept. It's just an experience. So we are learning to live in intimacy with experience. And this is where our hearts will calm and cool, and this is where the fires will be extinguished. So this is the one-way street to Nibbana that we talked about earlier in the retreat. Now, is there anything we can actually say about this Nibbana? And of course, there's plenty we can say about it, and whole books have been written on the subject. But of course, the problem is that none of it captures its reality. It does not apply. Some stories may suggest it, may evoke the flavor of Nibbana. So, for example, in case 20 of the Book of Serenity in the Chan tradition or the Zen tradition, we find an encounter between Lo Han Kuei Shen and Fa Yen Wen Yi. Now, Lo Han was a teacher at a meditation monastery in China, where he taught 2 3-month intensive retreats each year. Now, meditation monks would spend 6 months of the year in intensive meditation practice. They'd have 3 months of meditation, and then they'd finish the retreat, and they'd often leave the monastery and go off and do other things for 3 months and come back either to the same monastery or to another monastery for another 3 months. They still do this in Korea, actually. The meditation monks and nuns still live in the same way. So after 3 months of intensive meditation, the monks would leave and go off and do other things, maybe travel or study or teach or work at different projects, whatever. So at the end of one retreat, Lo Han is saying goodbye to these monks who he's been teaching intensively for the past 3 months. And he's keeping an eye out for one of them. He's keeping an eye out for Fa Yen, because Fa Yen has been maturing in his practice, and Lo Han knows that he's just on the edge of insight. He just needs a small push to get him there. And so Lo Han is at the gate saying goodbye to each monk as they leave. Fa Yen approaches, and Lo Han asks, "Where are you going?" And Fa Yen says, "I am on pilgrimage, following the wind." Now you get a sense that he's already pretty loosened up. "I'm just following the wind." Lo Han says, "What are you on pilgrimage for?" And Fa Yen said, "I don't know." Lo Han said, "Not knowing is most intimate." And Fa Yen suddenly attained great awakening. You like that story? I like it. What are you on pilgrimage for? See that the move that's being made? Fa Yen said, "I don't know." Not knowing is most intimate. And this is where Nibbana is found. Here. This, most intimate. It's not found in any story about here. This. It's just here. This. So, as you do this practice, your task is to be intimate. Do not separate yourselves by being lost in your thoughts about what is going on. And as soon as you recognize that you are lost in your thoughts about what is going on, then note the thoughts. Note the condition of being lost in thoughts about what is going on. Directly experience that. So just this now. Okay, I think that's enough for tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick, for a wonderful and enlightening Dhamma talk. Fellow yogis and all brothers and sisters who join us tonight on Facebook Live, tonight's Dhamma talk has ended. Thank you for joining us. And do join us again tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Malaysia time. The topic for tomorrow's talk is 3 Satipatthanas. I will now stop the live streaming. Thank you.